Hi everyone! Welcome to Artsonia's After School Art Club. Today we have a fun art project from Miss Tvedten, an art teacher from South Carolina. Hope you enjoy the video and don't forget to have your artwork uploaded to your Artsonia gallery.
Hello Artsonia Art Club. Miss Tvedten here in South Carolina. Today I want to share a lesson with you inspired by the American artist Georgia O'Keeffe. And here's an example of that finished painting. You may have seen Georgia O'Keeffe's work before. She's famous for paintings of flowers and also paintings with bones in them from New Mexico, where she had a home and spent a lot of time doing beautiful landscape paintings. She also spent some time here in South Carolina as an art teacher. So Georgia O'Keeffe, a famous American artist who did beautiful landscape paintings. And if you go online and you do a search for Georgia O'Keeffe watercolors, you'll see some beautiful watercolor landscapes that she's done. And those are the paintings that these paintings were inspired by. And you can see that all of my paintings are silhouettes, an outline with no interior details of trees. You wouldn't have to do a tree. Of course, you could do a painting of anything you like. But what's really fun about this project is the beauty of getting just two colors. And for me, I like to use opposite colors on the color wheel because they make each other stand out. They contrast the most. Red being the opposite of red being the opposite of green, pardon me. Purple is actually the opposite of yellow, which this would show. Blue is the opposite of orange. And I did do purplish on this, a purplish blue. So I like using complementary colors, opposite on the color wheel because they stand out. And I also like this exercise for the practice that it gives you for brush control with watercolors. Speaking of watercolors, the only thing you need to create these beautiful pictures are watercolors. Any kind of watercolors will do. I have some watercolors here. Of course, you'd also need some water. And if you have watercolor paper, then that's a paper specifically designed for watercolors. I think it's the best for watercolors. It'll work on other paper, but of course, watercolor paper would be your best choice. All right, guys, so let me show you how I created these beautiful tree silhouette paintings inspired by the artist Georgia O'Keeffe. All right, let's get into it. Okay guys, so here you can see me at my desk with my watercolor paper. I did have a pad of 9x12 watercolor paper and I cut those sheets into 4 pieces so I would be able to do multiple pictures. I also like doing these small. I think they look beautiful and it gives me extra papers if I mess up or just extra papers for extra paintings. So that's a small piece of watercolor paper you can see there, and that's a finished example. I have my paints, I have my watercolor paints, I have some reference. Reference is what an artist looks at to help them with their pictures, with their artwork. I just did an online search for tree silhouette. You can get a grown-up to help you, and they might even have to look it up to see how to spell silhouette. That is a challenging word to spell. But I did tree silhouettes. And now and that's my reference, just to help me see some tree shapes. You could also just go outside and look at some tree shapes. Now what I'm doing here with my paint is I'm just getting my watercolors wet. Some watercolor artists like to go ahead and add a little bit of water. I've even seen where they'll use a spray bottle to add a little water or just a drop of water into each little cake of watercolor paint to get it activated. Watercolor paint, you have to add water to for it to work. And you do want watercolor paint to be nice and watery, liquidy. The more you move your brush in the pigment, in the solid watercolor, the more of the actual pigment, the paint that you will dissolve, and the more intense your paint will be. So you can see me there twirling my brush. And even though that yellow, like I can see the bottom of that pan is low, it's not empty. Watercolors are great paints because they last such a long time. So here I am going in, painting my yellow tree silhouette. This is the one that ends up being, I had some greenish too, you'll be able to see later, but you've already seen a little preview of. So I'm painting in my tree silhouette with the watercolor, and one of the things I do like about doing trees for this, or you could do other plants if you wanted to, is that if you get the shape a little, the silhouette, the outline is a little bit wrong, like it doesn't look like the one you were looking at or the one you were looking at a picture of, it's fine, because there's a lot of variance, a lot of variation in the way these plants can look, whereas a silhouette of, say, a person would be a bit more challenging. If you are an experienced, practiced artist and you want to challenge, then try this technique with a silhouette of a person. Now this technique I'm using here, where I had the yellow was wet, and you can see I'm going in with blue. Excellent color mixing opportunity here. Yellow and blue make green. So you can see me here adding in that blue right on top of the yellow, wet into wet. Those colors mixing together and creating that green shade there. Now I'm adding more. Now I have those little puddles in the lid. When I use my, oh, and look, I'm going to let that one drip. I like to use the lid to mix my new colors instead of mixing on the pans themselves. Like the pan is like where the color comes from, like the main little thing, because I don't want my pans to get muddy. I want to make sure I've still got blue and I've still got yellow, even though here I'm mixing together to make a green. And in this case I'm mixing on my paper, but just for future reference, I like to mix my colors in my little lid. Now, once you finish painting your item, the subject matter of your picture, you're going to pick a contrasting color. Opposite colors on the color wheel are going to have the greatest contrast, like red and green being opposites. But if you have any kind of, you could do value contrast, dark versus light, temperature contrast, warm versus cool. On here I'm using purple since I have a lot of yellow in my tree, and this is the fun part, and the part where you're really practicing that brush control. I'm trying to get close to my tree but not touching. I want to leave a little small white space between the subject matter of my picture and the negative space. The negative space is all the space around your picture. It leaves a little white, you see that little white border there? That looks really beautiful. That's one of the qualities of those paintings by Georgia O'Keeffe that I'm so enamored with, that I like so much. Those little white spaces, and you'll see even in her pictures that there'll be spots where whoops, you touched and the colors blend together, and that happens on mine too, up at the top of my tree, and that doesn't mess it up. That's just part of, of course, the learning process. And in the end, I think what I like about that is that you see the artist's work there, that it's created by a person, that it's not perfect. And it also just adds like an interesting little place where the colors mix. On mine, it happened right there at the top, and you can see that green starting to spread into the purple. It doesn't ruin your picture. We're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to enjoy a painting exercise. But in the end, we still will have a beautiful picture. So here at the end, guys, I have a photograph of 3 of those others. The video cut off before I finished painting mine, but you can see 3 other examples here. I hope that you enjoy creating some O'Keeffe-inspired silhouette paintings using watercolors, and don't forget to get those uploaded to your online portfolio on Artsonia, and have a great time. All right, talk to you later. Thanks.